Let's start getting them in, opening it up, sir.
Okay.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Wally.
Morning.
Good morning, Junior June Cortez. Oh, it's good to see familiar faces here.
We got a couple of registrations amounting to about 70 people, so we'll just wait for a couple of more people before we begin. Again, good morning, everybody. We are just waiting for several other people to begin our public forum. Today is International Day of Disaster Risk Reduction. So if you're going to refer to this event, please use our hashtag. It's all about governance, hashtag DRR Day. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Building National and Community Resilience. This is an initiative of Resilient.PH, and today we are going to have a public review of House Bill 5989, otherwise known as the Disaster Resilience Act. So before we begin, I just read a couple of reminders for everybody as part of our normal protocol to engage everybody in this public forum. This meeting is being recorded, and the video recordings together with the discussions on chat will be shared to members of our Congress for their reference, as well as some of the output will be shared publicly to the participants of this forum. Please check your internet connection. If it's unstable, try to disconnect other devices. They tend to eat up the bandwidth. Choose one device when we are talking or communicating with the rest. They tend to create feedback whenever we speak. If possible, please use earphones, external microphones for better audio. And if possible, test them before you engage the group when you want to share or speak. Disable camera or video if you're encountering problems. Again, as part of our experience in the past, some backgrounds tend to distract other participants, so please choose a more appropriate background. Mute your audio by default. We will also be muting participants who are not talking to manage the conversation. We would like to ask everybody, whenever you are going to speak, to introduce yourself and mention the organization you belong to. Also, if you can change your name as part of our recording and documentation, so we can track your participation as well as the organization that you represent. We would like to also try to maintain order. If you can raise your hand or put in your questions or comments in the chat room. This Zoom has features you can use during the event, so you can check them out whenever you are going to react to any of the things being said during the forum. Okay. So with that, I'd like to call the Chief Resilience Officer of Resilient.PH, Sir Ace Esmeralda, to start our public forum.
Good morning, everyone. I would like to welcome everybody who are now in the webinar. This is the first time that we are going to have this public forum, and this is to discuss on the House bill that was mentioned. So this is sponsored by Resilient.PH. We are a startup and a social enterprise company, and we'd like to get everyone on board, not only in Resilient.PH, but also on the advocacy of really putting ourselves, being involved, and having a voice in the future Senate bill, that will have a great impact on our profession, on our advocacy, and even on our lives. So this is a webinar that is designed to for free flowing. Now we can discuss, and everybody is allowed or encouraged to get their share, your opinion, your comments. And we have a group of people behind us at Resilient.PH who will take down the notes in the Google form so that we will be able to capture the topic in a very organized and systematic order. And then for those who would like to really be part of the taking notes, no, of for the OCD and for the Senate to look at into our comments, you can email us at hello@resilient.ph. And I'd like to really welcome everyone because right now we are reaching almost 80 participants, and there are still more coming based on the registration. And then um, I would like to emphasize that this is a public forum, and this is really our initiatives. And then everyone who are here are considered to be really someone or a person that really believes that resiliency starts in ourselves in order for us to have a very resilient Philippines. So we invited people from OCD, we invited senators, and we invited also uh, from professors and advocates in the academe and in different groups. And we hope that they will also be able to catch up and then participate with us in our next batch of discussion. We only have 1 hour and a half for us to talk about things that are really close to our hearts. So I will not take more time, and I would like to thank you for presence here, and please participate. Just raise your hands or you put everything in the chat box, and we'll be glad to really hear from you again. So if you have anything that you can need to raise to us in private, you can always email us at hello@resilient.ph. And then we encourage you to observe, say, courtesy to everyone as we talk. And then if you have disagreement with others, that is very good because we don't want to be a group of people who will just agree with each other. We need to we need to discuss really the things that we need to or like to have it in our Senate version. We still have time to bring our voices. So thank you everyone and good morning.
Okay, so with that, I'd just run with you the objectives of today's public forum. We are going to capture insights and sentiments about the House bill that has been passed in the lower house. We are going to be compiling the insights from the chat. We are going to be dissecting the audio recording so that we're able to capture your insights. As mentioned by Sir Ace, we are also documenting every contribution from everybody in our Google form. We will be consolidating that into one output that we will forward to the Office of Civil Defense as well as to the Senate authors of the counterpart bill that they are putting together. We would like to use this opportunity to inspire everybody to continue discussions so that we can help become contributory to the law that eventually will be passed. Okay? So our process, it's going to be a free-flowing discussion note. This is the first time that we're doing this. The structure is quite new for us. We have not invited any speaker so that we get more time for everybody to just share. Everybody is encouraged to participate, so you can key in your comments or questions in the chat, as well as raise your hands to start sharing your insights about the bill. If you have not yet read or browsed through House Bill 5989, we have a copy which you can request, and we can forward them to you. But you can also Google it. I think it's available online. The last version that we are using is the one that they approved last January. Okay, so the team is going to be compiling all of your inputs. Remember to mention your organization when you want to share and talk to the public. Okay, so for our framework, we are going to be asking those who will comment and raise questions to specify the particular provision, line, or section of the bill. And then we are going to capture either your questions, your observations, or your recommendations. So, just to clarify, when you say question, you have something that you read through in the bill and you would like to ask, what does this mean, for example, or why is it here? An observation could be, okay, I think this is not the right word to use. I think this is not appropriate to include in the bill. And a recommendation, of course, I think you missed out on a particular aspect of disaster management. Please include this. Or recommendation, maybe we should remove or change the wording or the sentence. Again, we are not legislators, but our inputs count, especially since this morning we have a great mix of stakeholders from the academe, from the actual practitioners of disaster risk management. We have public servants from the local disaster risk and reduction and management office participating. We have also representatives from the private sector. So all our voices are very critical. Note that in the usual legislative process, it's expected that they did consultation with the stakeholder groups. But from our observation, Resilient.PH, we don't know if this is valid across all the laws that have been established. There are processes, bills that were passed that were not really heavily consulted, where the stakeholders were not heavily consulted. So we would like to put our voice into the mix and hopefully contribute to the process. Okay? So, Sir Ace?
Yes, Wally, thank you for that. Um, we may start with anyone who'd like to raise a point, no? Everyone is really encouraged to raise your hands and just butt in once you are recognized by us, by the co-hosts, and we will always make sure that we have enough time to capture everything. So, for me, the first thing that is really important in a bill that will become a law is really the glossary. A lot of us here that I've invited, I mentioned about the essence of the glossary, because the glossary will become the definition of the term that we're going to use in our academe, in our studies, in our books, in our practice, and even in our things that we do in for our companies and our clients. So, do you also share that sentiment that the glossary is the most important thing in one of the most important aspect of the House bill or the future Senate bill? Anyone would like to agree or disagree with me on that?
Is
Yes, sir.
yeah, I agree, but equally important, and I just looked at the bill, is the kind of preamble on Article 1, Section 2D. It talks about the framework of this bill, and it talks about prevention, it talks about mitigation, and it talks about response. And what I cannot understand is why recovery was left out of the equation. Recovery is actually as important as prevention, as planning, as responding as well. In fact, when you talk about recovery, there are three major areas in recovery. There is the early recovery, there is this immediate recovery, and continuing recovery. What do you mean by continuing? Because when you recover, you don't only recover at that instant. Sometimes the effects of the disaster or whatever hostile environment there is could manifest down the years or many years from when the when the incident happened. So you need to plan that, and you have to include that when you first plan for any disaster. So when you talk about recovery, you don't talk about it when the disaster has occurred. You have to plan for the recovery when you actually plan for the disaster. So I just want to point that out, that recovery should also be given importance in the bill. So because it involves the use of budget, the use of money. So if it's not in the bill, the full gamut of how recovery is going to be conducted, which is supposed to be a whole of community approach, then whatever is the outcome of this bill will come to naught.
Thank you, Sir Hermie.
Thank you,
Noted on that.
Thank you, Sir Hermie. We noted that to connect the word recovery into the glossary, I think we really need to define then recovery, because recovery might be interpreted by different groups and different persons, especially if the Senate will have their own version of recovery. Anyone who can, anyone to take off from the statement of Sir Hermie Colina?
Right, and just to, I think, drill down the points or ace on the point that Sir Hermie raised, our experience in the Taal eruption, there were a lot of donations that were not properly disseminated. Some people did not get adequate relief, so it's very important. We encounter several typhoons in a year, and over the years, we haven't really come up with a structure to effectively manage the relief and recovery operations. So that's a very important point that Sir Hermie raised, and we hope that it really becomes a critical aspect of the law once it's improved by the Senate and eventually approved. Thank you, sir. Again, let me just break from the English. We are using English because it's easier to document. If you are having some difficulty conversing or you're shy in using the language, we are open to you sharing in Filipino, no worries. No other dialects, please, for the time being, so that it's easier to document everything. Pero welcome po mag-share, everybody. It's a public forum. We encourage your insights and your opinions because they matter.
Sir Wally.
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Hi, good morning po sa lahat. Yours truly po, Romel Pinera from the Municipality of Carmona, Cavite.
Thank you,
The
sir. Good morning.
local disaster risk reduction management officer. My apologies kasi hindi ko pa po nabasa itong exact version ng bill. That's why my questions will have to put it in the context na I'm just starting to browse through the bill. But since nabanggit na po yung recovery and with the discussions among LDRRMOs across Cavite and Calabarzon, I'm not quite sure, baka somebody from the group will be able to answer. Pagdating po sa recovery, and nung ako po ang estudyante kagaya ng iba sa atin dito, ang isa po sa nirecommend ko dyan, based on experience sa visit sa Japan, I don't know if this current bill includes yung power to establish a recovery agency. It may be different from the current framework that we are using with the Yolanda and with all the others. You just have to refer back to what Japan is doing. So they establish a regular department recovery agency that has a fixed lifetime of, let's say, 10 years. So to my mind, I think that's something basta regular department with regular budget, with regular people, focus on that particular recovery, magiging effective siya. But if we will still use a framework that uses the same set of people, the same set of department, the same set of resources, working on all other recoveries, I don't think magiging efficient and effective yung recovery. So it's a matter of recommendation and at the same time a question for those who were able to read the portion pagdating dun sa recovery. And at the same time, that's my personal recommendation. Thank you po, Sir Wally. Yun lang po.
Thank you, Sir Romel. I browsed through the bill myself and wasn't able to, a couple of weeks back, I wasn't able to actually see any write-up about creating a specific agency just for recovery. My interpretation, again, I might be wrong, it appears that I think they're going to tuck that in moving forward under the Department of Disaster Resilience. Again, I might be wrong. So people who have a more thorough background on the House bill, please share also your comments. And that suggestion from Sir Romel is coming from their own experience from Calabarzon. So thank you for that, sir. Noted.
Thank you, Sir Wally. Yun lang po.
So we are now in the point of discussing recovery. So we start with really defining what is recovery, and then what else do we see that we need to be included in the bill? Anyone?
Sir Romel raised an interesting point, Sir Ace. If you have noticed that the bill is recommending that the local disaster risk reduction and management officers will be made into the local disaster resilience officer. It appears like to the point of Sir Romel that the composition of the Department of Disaster Resilience on the ground, on the local level, will mimic the current setup with the provincial DRRMOs and the local DRRMOs.
Sir Wally?
Yes, sir.
Opo. If I may, I think I need to clarify yung recommendation. Siguro we'll have to go back doon sa ginamit ng Japan Reconstruction Agency, specifically for the Great East Japan earthquake. While they have the similar council framework, the same as our National Disaster Council framework, they have the power to create a regular department that has a lifespan of, let's say, 10 years, kung yun lang yung recovery. And that's their only job. But ang framework niya is a regular department, different and from the current council setup. So it's not the same as the local DROs, if that is the new term, and so it's a totally different structure from the current framework. So yung current framework ng council and then from the national down to the local will be as is to work on the resilience, if that is the direction. But there will be a different and new regular department with regular budget, with regular people to work specifically for that particular recovery.
Okay.
So,
Noted,
ganun
sir.
po yung framework niya.
Okay, so we are going to put in the note here your reference to the East Japan Reconstruction Agency. Copy, Sir Romel.
Yes, sir. Thank you pa.
Sir Romel, I'd like to ask, why is the Japanese model of the Department of Recovery, for example, or probably an agency of recovery under our DDR, bakit merong lifespan like say 10 years or 8 years? Hindi ba pwede na cotermino siya doon sa DDR?
Yeah, I think exactly it's the same. I don't know, siguro it's more of with culture with Japan. When they say we need to finish this by 10 years, then 10 years tapos yan. So siguro yung plano, yung recovery plan, naka-define siya for 10 years. So if my memory serves me right, given the recovery. So ganun din siya. Ibig sabihin, kung nilagay nila yung 10 years, ito yung budget, ito yung dami ng taong kailangan. So yun siya. Kung may extension man yun or ano, siguro that's a subject of a different discussion. But initially, may power yung council to create such a department na yun lang yung focus niya. So lahat ng resources, doon lang nakatutok. So hindi yung the same people, like for instance, DPWH doing this and then DOH doing this and everybody. Ang nangyayari kasi, these are the same set of people working on everything else. So kaya nawawala ng focus yung recovery. So ganun po yung, I think, ang principle na ginamit nila doon.
Just a point of clarification. When you talk about Department of Recovery and the objective, are they supposed to act on all recoveries, meaning all impacts of disasters, or specific ones, only the big ones, and the small ones can be left with the existing framework? Is that how it's going to work, or they will be taking care of all the recoveries of all disaster-related incidents?
Yes, good point po. Just one specific. So for per incident po yan. Like for instance, the specific recoveries for the Great East Japan earthquake. So like in our case, there should be one recovery agency for Taal volcano, one recovery agency for COVID-19, one recovery agency for Yolanda, etc., etc. So, and then defined yung lifespan niya given the recovery plan. Ganun po yung if I understood it correctly. Thank you.
Okay.
I think,
So,
sorry.
Yeah, yes, Sir Magno. Yes, Sir Magno.
Nakamute
Good morning,
kayo, sir,
everyone.
there.
Good morning, everyone. Yeah, thank you
Morning,
for
sir.
giving me a chance to share my idea about recovery. I agree with the first statement of the one who mentioned about recovery. Now, with the four stages about disaster, we have to agree on the fact that dito tayo mahina sa recovery as a Filipino. We have to remember that. A lot of disasters happen, pero look at our past experience. Now, creating an agency or creating or another agency for recovery, I think we have to study it further. Why? Bakit hindi natin ibigay sa local government? Because they themselves, on the grassroots level, they are the one who are affected on this disaster. Ibigay natin sa kanila yung pondo. Ibigay natin sa kanila yung pamamahala. Because I agree with that, it's really the culture of the Japanese that pag sinabing 10 years, 5 years, matatapos nila yon. But of course, they have that kind of culture talaga na disiplinado sila. Now, para sa akin, Sir Wally, bakit hindi natin ibigay yung pamamahala sa local government? For example, with the eruption of Taal, with the eruption of, let me share na lamang yung Pinatubo. We are much affected here in Subic Bay. But in a matter of less than a year, we were able to to clean up what is inside the Subic Bay. But of course, that is under the American supervision. What I'm saying is that kung ibibigay natin yung pamamahala sa local government, mas mapapadali. Mas mapapadali. Kasi based on the past experience, naging national level lahat ang pamamahala. But masyadong mabagal. Masyadong mabagal. At I think everybody will agree na ang nakakaalam ng higit sa pangangailangan ay yung mismong community na affected para sa sarili nila. Yun po aking idea for that. Thank you.
Thank you, Sir Rani. Okay, so just to summarize what you said, ideally, the recovery efforts is brought down to the local level because they know the situation better and they can act on it. And I think it also resonates with the recommendation from Sir Romel. Tama po ba, Sir Romel? Na at least kumbaga this agency that's for recovery is also on the local level? Or in your head, it's a national effort, yung recovery?
Yes, Apo. I would agree with my co-cadre, Sir Magno, assuming that the disaster is really within the local level.
Okay.
Which brings me to my next recommendation. Yung with all due respect from people, from our friends and colleagues in the regional, yung strengthening ng regional. Kasi kagaya ng most of the cases, yun nga, nagiging national siya kasi yung regional is, the way I see it, is a staff level framework ng national. So when it reaches the regional level, it automatically becomes a national. So yung framework ng local that has to be adapted at the regional, so that may mga disasters na hindi naman kailangan, kagaya na sinasabi ni Sir Rani na national, mas appropriate yung regional lang, but the regional level should be able to respond in a similar fashion with the local government in terms of structure, most especially yung fund. So yes, I agree with Sir Rani on that. Provided nga na yung scale ng recovery is talagang local lang. Of course, from the local, tatanggi pa ba naman kami dyan? Kung ibababa yung pondo, the local will do that. But we have to recognize also the fact that most of the disasters may not be done with a better recovery within the provincial lang kasi yun yung highest level sa local eh. More often than not, to my mind, it's minimum regional eh. So, yun po yung additional point lang po. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Noted.
Can I make a comment, Wally?
Yes,
Go
sir.
ahead, sure. Go ahead.
Yeah. On Romel's comment about the recovery efforts done locally, regionally. So what you're saying is that are we going to establish a threshold when it's going to be local, when it's going to be elevated to regional, and when it's going to be national? I think if we are going to set that up, I'm not sure whether the law actually include that or there is a provision in the law that actually has trigger points of escalation, meaning if it's just a really local event, then it will be done locally. If the local event has the potential to impact a wider area, then it could be regional. Then if it has the potential again to impact the whole of the country, like for example, this pandemic, then it has to become national. So I think we need to have those trigger points along the way so that the response, the planning, the response, and the most important part, the recovery, will be effective and successful.
Sir Wally?
Go ahead, sir.
Yes, sir. In reaction to Sir Joy Fernandez reaction. Yes, sir. We have a protocol with regards to the escalation from barangay up to the national level. So it's in the NDRRMC Memorandum Circular number 4 series of 2012. Yun lang pong capacity pagdating sa regional level. Kakaiba kasi siya as opposed dun sa local. So mukhang mas masyado natin na pagtutunan ng pansin yung framework ng local pero medyo personal opinion nagiging gap or weak link yung pagdating po sa regional. So, but yes, there is a protocol po for that matter.
So just to put it in perspective, guys, from my initial read of the bill, much of the setup and structure is patterned from the framework that's currently following the Republic Act 10121 on the creation of the Local Disaster Risk Reduction Management Office. So we're taking note, Sir Romuald, of the point that it's more about, your recommendation is more about strengthening the capabilities of the regional structures, okay, among the other stuff that you mentioned. Thank you. Okay, good. For those who have not read through the House Bill 5989, we can share with you a copy of it, or you can Google it. Some of you might even be thinking right now, do we actually need a Department of Disaster Resilience? Baka you don't want to even talk about the bill first. You just want to share about your general sentiment about this department altogether. That's also welcome. So your insights, your opinions are very valuable. Keep them coming.
I would like to react and address my reaction to Fire Chief Rani. Are you still there, sir? And
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
to Sir Romel also. If the recovery will be at the LGU level, how will the different capability of each LGU be affected? Because there are LGUs that may not really be as prepared, compared to the urbanized areas. How will we going to put that into context and then probably make a provision that the senators will really have that inclusivity, but then we still consider and respect the LGU recovery level?
Sir, my thinking is that the different provinces, different regions, had undergone training on post risk how do you call it, Ardana. Yeah, Ardena, yeah. And based on that, they have a valid statistics on the ground, on the family affected, the buildings affected, the livelihood affected, and others. So with that, I think mabibigyan natin ng higit na pansin yung pangangailangan nila. Kasi hindi na kinakailangan parating ito sa national. I-report lamang nila to sa tamang agency ng gobyerno natin, and mabigyan sila ng tamang budget on that. Ang ano sir, kasi ang base sa mga karanasan, because I traveled also a lot, especially in Mindanao, part in Visayas, pag nagkakanta ako ng training, is that ako mismo nakikita ko how people are suffering, mabagal. Kasi I'm just putting myself to their shoes. Sabi ko, parang masakit sa isipin na ganito yung kalagayan nila. For example, Yolanda, bakit hanggang ngayon andun pa rin yung nakita ko yung mga row housing na hindi pa natatapos? You see, that is national. That's a good example. Bakit doon inilagay sa malapit sa tabing ilog? You know, walang basta doon lamang inilagay. In other words, kung mabibigyan talaga ng pansin at may bibigyan natin sa LGU to, palagay ko mas effective sir yung paggamit ng budget. Kasi trained naman sila kung sa training ang pag-usapan, they really train on that. Ang gagawin na lang natin siguro perhaps is that pagka naayos natin ito is that i-monitor na lang natin, is monitoring on the national level. At the same time, gusto ko rin ipasok dito yung tinatawag nating being responsible officials or leaders ng isang community. Kasi yung budget kasi sir talaga yun ang nagiging talaga problema natin sa bansa natin. Kaya para sa akin, kung may bibigay talaga natin sa local government yung pamamahala ng recovery, andun yung accountability. Tukoy natin talaga kung sino talaga ang accountable on that. Yun po.
Sir Wally, I think you mentioned it.
Yes, sir, please.
Yes, I second yung yung binanggit po ni Sir Rani. And siguro before I go into that, yes, for the record po, I'm supporting the Department of Disaster Resilience bill, no. So and of course I also agree with the recommendation of Sir Rani na local government. And I sorry hindi ko po na-catch yung nagbanggit kanina. Yes, I also second yung binabanggit po ni Sir Rani that there are protocols, there are trainings available on how to do all these things, no. And siguro for the others na medyo hindi po masyadong familiar, we just have to look at it at the context na pagdating dun sa capacity, it all boils down dun sa fund, no. So we look at from a highly urbanized city like Pasig in a national capital region down to a 6th-class municipality from a unknown place somewhere in Mindanao, no? So it's really a big diversity in between those. So in as far as yung highly urbanized cities with enough money to do whatever is needed, surely they can handle it even at the city level. But with regards to a 6th-class municipality na baka mas mahirap pa sa isang mayamang barangay sa NCR, definitely they will need the support they will need in terms of manpower and other resources, especially finances. So, yun na po. I hope I can have reacted accordingly.
Thank you, Sir Romel. I would just like to throw that same sentiment to the group, especially the other Eldrimos in the forum. Kasi the point about the current setup, you can only use a particular budget from your IRA allocation. So yung sinasabi nga ni Sir Romel, kapag medyo you are considered sixth or fifth or fourth class municipality, you do not have the same resources as the ones probably in Metro Manila. So kapag may nangyari sa lugar nyo, napaka-limited din talaga ng resources that you will be able to use. At the same time, in terms of preparation, mula pa nangyayari, the current financial, the budgeting setup means na, okay, yung mas mababang municipality, ito lang yung level of preparation that they can do because ito lang yung budget nila. So very good, interesting point to raise. Baka the other LGUs would like to comment and share experiences as well. Again, the important point here is we would like to get the comments, sentiments of people para kung hindi pa to napag-iisipan ng ating mga senador, baka it can also parang give them that insight. I see Sir Sam Acosta's hand raised. Sir Sam, go ahead. Nakamute ka, Sir Sam.
Okay, hi. This is Sam. Anyway, can I go to another topic, perhaps?
Sure.
Moving forward.
We can just go back and forth. No worries. Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Okay, because by the way, this is Sam Acosta from the private sector representing Company Active Index. We are a systems integrator providing surveillance and monitoring systems, mainly anchored with disaster risk reduction. I'm also currently taking executive masters on disaster risk and crisis management at the Asian Institute of Management. Just pertaining to Article 1, sorry, I have not really gone through the whole article or document, but under Section 2 for the Declaration of Policy, paragraph A, it says, protect the lives and properties of its citizens by addressing and preventing the causes of vulnerabilities due to natural disasters. And I've been going through the rest of the paragraphs, but I don't see a bit of explanation about this matter. And there seems limited focus on natural disasters. What about disasters related to, the pandemics like what we are currently faced, which we never expected? There are also this, what we would call silent pandemic in cybersecurity, which has probably much more economic, socioeconomic impacts, which we are totally blinded. There are potential crises arising from local and international, terrorisms challenging human security as well. So is this like covered in the rest of the other part of the documents? And secondly, under the same section for paragraph K, it says strengthen the chain of command to establish a unified command system for disaster management. Under this item, I'd like to highlight the importance of community-based nerve centers. Nerve center meaning where people in the community can be able to make decisions within their own, limited vicinity, and having active response centers, which are also community-based. We understand and know, we have probably learned from this in this pandemic crisis, that during times of disasters, especially that we are a country of archipelago, we can really rely on a national response level, like so timely. And for this, it is imperative to, empower the grassroots level, particularly referring at the barangay levels. Those are just some of my probably questions. Thank you.
Sir Sam, just to clarify to your first point, you said that your observation, it's limited focus on natural disaster. Did I get that right?
That's what I see, because I was just reading through the first paragraph of
Right,
the
right.
Declaration of
So
Policy.
I'm typing it down. You're saying that from what you're reading, there seems to be a limited focus, or you're just focused on natural disasters.
Just reading verbatim, I cannot really totally judge the whole
No, no, no.
document, but
I'm just
it's
for
not the first.
documentation, Sir Sam. I just wanted to clarify what you mean by limited focus. Do you mean that parang from what you've read, nakafocus lang sa natural disasters? Ang
Yeah, because it
pagkakain.
was
Okay,
mentioned
okay.
there,
Okay, got it, got it. Thank
particularly.
you.
Yep.
Yes, sir. Just for documentation purposes. We note
Okay.
on your disclaimer about having read the document. So yes.
Oh, yeah. I think taking off from Sam's comment, no, I think Sam mentioned two things that I want to discuss also. Yung the use of the nerve center for the barangay level, which is really important in our communications. And then even if we put them in the context of resilience communications, which we are promoting at Resilient.PH, that's very important. And number two is that mentioned, as you mentioned also, Ali, to us, Sam, was that this is really limited to natural disasters, no? Because I'm still looking for a word like, say, human-induced disasters. Is terrorism part of the human-induced disasters? Any thought on that, Sir Romel or Sir Rani or Sir Joy? Sir Hermi, that's really my question
Yes,
because we just passed our anti-terrorism act. So how will it impact if we define terrorism as a human-induced disaster? And what is if terrorism is a disaster? What is really the definition of a terrorism as a disaster? Because there could be just no big damage. I think that's one area that has to be clarified also. Yes, sir, Hermie.
yeah, actually, you can define it in the bill as one of the conditions. It's an all threat risk, meaning you cover everything: man made, disaster, cybersecurity, what have you. So you can actually cover there. The response will be dependent on the impact of that to the community or to the country. So you should not be, I guess, you should not be looking at just the natural disaster. Yes, we have plenty. Yes, we are very experienced as supposed to be as far as the natural disasters are concerned. But there are far more other threats. There are a lot of other threat actors out there that can equally impact significantly on the country. Now, one other thing that I wanted to raise is I'm not sure whether the bill also covers the education and training of our people. It's so good we have a Department of Resilience, but unless our people on the ground, on the barangay level, city or provincial level, if the people are not adequately and appropriately trained and educated on how to be resilient, on how to respond, on how to act in case of any disaster, or in case of in any incident for that matter that would have tremendous impact on their lives, then they would not be able to, I guess, to implement resilient actions so that they would be able to address whatever impact those incidents would have on their lives.
Thank you, sir. Again, guys, you are free to key in your comments about what our sharers are saying in the chat room. We are capturing everything. Thank you to Sir Hermie for those insights. So keep them coming, guys. It's okay to disagree, by the way. I know Filipinos are quite polite, but it's okay to disagree as long as we do it with respect and due courtesy.
So Riley.
Go ahead, please.
Yeah. Good morning, everyone.
Morning, sir. Norman.
Morning, Norman.
Yes, sir. I am Engineer Norman Ancheta from Valenzuela City Command Center, a former military officer also, and a practitioner in emergency communications. Now, I've seen the entirety of the House bill. I've read it. And I would like also to see the comparison or how would we integrate the another House bill, which is 7067, which institutionalized the National Emergency Communication System, supporting disaster state, crisis state, and the normal state from barangay level to the national level. So parang binabasa ko yung House Bill for DRR, I haven't seen any of those operation centers, communication centers that would support such. So parang kailangan siguro integrate din, much more that we're dealing with a catastrophe, natural catastrophe, and a human activity. Wala sir sa current national law or ordinances or memorandum from NTC, much more that we have the Republic Act 367 is already obsolete, the radio control law. Wala rin nag-allow to communicate between and among responders. So with this House Bill, necessarily na may support din yung House Bill ng DRR. So I don't know if it's a comment or it is a suggestion to integrate the two House bills. Thank you, sir.
Sir, Norman, just a clarification. Itong House Bill 7067 has been approved?
Wala pa, naka-line up pa lang yan, but there are some already initial meetings being conducted.
Okay, I'll just take note of the number, and it's not yet approved in the lower house. Pero very interesting point, and we hope that we capture your sentiments correctly, para we can put in that recommendation to really integrate all of the things that we're supposed to be doing to build resilience. Okay, thank you, sir.
Exactly, sir. In addition, it tends to create another department or attach agency to the ILG.
Oh, okay.
Sir Wally?
Go ahead.
Yeah. I support yung kay Engineer Norman, ano, as a practitioner on the ground. Yung radio communications is really the lifeblood of communication sa ground, no? Siguro ang isang pwedeng ilagay yung recommendation dyan, hopefully makarating sa finish line, yung assignment ng mga frequencies. Imagine mo local government, magpapalisensya ka, ninegosyohin yung lisensya ng radyo. Dapat yan, given yan na ang NTC meron ng inassign for all disaster councils from barangay to municipal to provincial. Hindi yan dapat para applyan pa na parang mga private at negosyo. So if that is something na mailagay nyo dyan sa recommendation, and if it will reach the finish line, then this forum would have a very, very good output na masasalamatan ng lahat ng practitioners.
Parang malaking pressure nun, Sir Romela. Grabe ka.
Experience natin yan lahat eh. But really, it's really communication. Very, very critical po yung radio communications on the ground.
Very good point.
Sir Wally, my idea about what Engineer Norman have mentioned, we have to go back sa basis of communication, handheld radio. Tama rin yung sinabi ng kasamahan natin from Carmona, a good friend, that hindi na kinakailangan ng mga maraming paperworks on having radio, handheld radio permit. Ang sigurong tutukan natin dito is that how are we going to strengthen that kind of communication by putting up radio repeaters? Okay? Kasi wag naman mangyari, pero pwede mangyari talaga. The big one. Talagang ang ano natin, ang cellphone natin talagang backdown yan. Ilan lang sa atin mayroong tawag na communication na satellite phone. Pero again, babalik tayo na kinakailangan talaga natin ng handheld radio. Now, the thing is, pag naglagay naman tayo ng mga radio repeater, ang problema natin ay nasasabotahe tayo. Ito mga kaibigan natin sa makakaliwa. Yun ang isa sa nagiging problema rin natin. But again, siguro, yung problema naman niya, masusolusyonan niya. But the thing is, mag-put up tayo o strengthen natin yung communication system natin na maglagay tayo ng repeaters para halimbawa kami dito sa Subic, pwede kayo makapag-transmit all the way to Region 1, Region 2, and to NCR in times of disaster or emergency. Kasi yung first 72 hours is very critical pagdating sa earthquake. Very critical yan. So we need a lot of information on the ground pagdating sa communication. So I support with the idea of Engineer Norman.
Sir
Wally?
Wally.
Okay, good.
Wally?
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to make a comment on the communication part. We're just talking about radios and what have you, but we haven't really talked about using satellite phones. The technology is there already. Globe and Smart are offering that. In fact, during Yolanda, that's what I used. That's what we used. We had satellite phones on the ground in Tacloban. It really helped. That was born out of our experience during the Typhoon Milenio. Can you just imagine? I was in the office. I was in my office in the Enterprise Center. I wanted to contact our factory in Batangas. I could not even make contact because all the lines were down. So that's when we decided to invest on satellite phones. And when Yolanda did happen, we used satellite phones to communicate. But so the technology is there. It has matured already, I think. So we can use that not only for voice communication, but also for data communication, which is really important, especially during disasters. When you have to send reports, you have to assess what's happening on the ground, and then what kind of response is needed on the ground. So I think that should also be looked at. We should not be confined. We should not confine ourselves on the the radio frequency and what have you. If we can have a more sophisticated, if it's not that expensive, then we have to pursue that. In a way, that's the reason for having this Department of Resilience, so that all the resources, all the actions that can be taken will be focused on really having an effective and successful response to any disaster that will occur in this country. Because we haven't really seen one really, really effective response. Even the Yolanda, we had quite a number of comments when we were in Yolanda. Where's the government here? Where the people are running scared. Information. There were a lot of miscommunication. There were a lot of, a lot of false information running around going around in Tacloban, and people were really scared. They wanted to get out of Tacloban. So these are the sort of things that need to be thought of in the law and when we talk about resilience. And that's why earlier I talked about education, because if people are well educated and well trained, they will respond accordingly. They will act accordingly. They won't be acting like, headless chicken running around, without any, confused like the deacons, confused like anything. I saw a lot of, when I went to Tacloban 2 days after the event, I saw from my own two eyes, people were running around really scared because they heard about this news that, the NPAs are going to attack Tacloban. So I had to tell my people there that, look, that's not the way how the NPAs operate. They won't do it. They are not going to do it. So don't listen to all this information. So these are the sort of things that, that would come up in any major incident. Not only the big one, meaning, yes, we are preparing for the big one, but equally, if there is a perfect storm, if there is a confluence of disasters, like what's happening now, we have COVID-19, and what if a Typhoon Yolanda will hit the country? What are we going to do? It's just equally the same as having a big one, because where are you going to evacuate your people when you are talking about social distancing? You are talking about all these other protocols. So these are the sort of things that should really be thought of in this particular bill, and that has to be addressed by the department. When they are formed, they will hit the ground running and come up with a really good resilience plan. for the country.
Noted, Sir Hermie. And just to share some experience, the idea of communicating to even the local dream O's from in my doing my research, there are places with absolutely zero connectivity. So, in trying to manage disasters, uh, all forms of communication are really very critical. Sir Sam?
Yeah, hi, Sir Wally. Yes, I do really appreciate what Sir Hermie, Sir Ronnie, and the other gentlemen has actually highlighted on the communication aspect, because I have had a presentation on the Disaster Prevention Month in July with the DICT team. And I was actually advocating that without communication and collaboration, I think nothing is just gonna happen, even if we plan all this. But if we fail in communication, then it's just tantamount to saying it's just all gonna fail. And pertaining to what I think one is it Angel Norman or our colleague from Carmona Cavite mentioned about repeaters. So actually, there are
Sir Rani
emerging.
from, I think, Subic.
Opo. Sorry. Okay. So actually, there are emerging and robust technologies like LoRaWAN that doesn't need internet. I think I've mentioned this with Sir Ace as well. So this could, support interconnections of smart IoT systems for sensors and other monitoring devices or equipments that can run through a span of miles and miles, so which we could actually deploy within those remote, even those remote areas with no internet, which in then we can link to satellite systems or to long range parabolic antennas to the nearest available internet connection. I mean, basically the bottom line is technologically setting up a reliable redundant communication system is very feasible, and there are a lot of available more robust technologies that we can actually employ. And by the way, in terms of the radio communication for emergencies, uh, I don't know if you're familiar, we have this Zello, which is actually utilized by some of the first responders even in the United States, where they can actually interconnect with repeaters that connects with the conventional two-way radios. And it's very convenient way, which enables or empowers all responders, especially at the remote areas, for real-time collaboration. I mean, there are a lot more that I can enumerate, but one thing I'd like to highlight finally is there is actually a document. I'll share with you the link later on. It's from the United Nations Conference on Trade and Development. The title of the document is Report of the Secretary General, the Role of Science, Technology, and Innovation in Building Resilient Communities. I'll share with you the link later on, which basically gives a very comprehensive guidelines and suggestions on how we can actually empower people, especially at the grassroots level, with digital technologies. Thank you.
Right. Thank you, Sir Sam. We'll probably even share that with the final output so our legislators can also look at it. Thank you, Sir Sam.
Thank you, Sir Wally.
There's a question in the chat about the role of the private sector in disaster management and recovery in particular. And from my reading of the bill, it doesn't seem that they spelled out exactly how the private sector will uh, be part of it. I think in the current setup, we just simply ask donations from the private sector and let the private sector do their thing. Perhaps one of the important components of the new bill should be a detailed outline of what we can expect from the private sector, not just from the recovery, but from across the different parts of the disaster management cycle. Anybody care to comment? Please do so.
Yes,
We
Wally.
also need, yes, sir, go ahead.
Yes, I just as far as the bill is concerned, we can probably recommend four fundamental concepts that actually cover what we have just discussed. Number one is whole of community approach. Whole of community that includes the private sector already. So you've covered that. Secondly, unified command. So there has to be a one single command that that governs the whole structure. Thirdly, integrated response. So all the responses all the responses have to be coordinated and integrated. And lastly, planned recovery. And that's why I'm very focused on recovery, because that's really part of that fundamental concept of resiliency. So this, if we are going to put this at the very beginning of the bill and try to, I guess, try to address each one of them when we go through the whole provisions of the bill, then we can have a well-covered and well-crafted disaster resilience bill.
Thank you, Sir Hermie. Whole of community approach, unified command, integrated response, and planned recovery. Noted. In the bill, they mentioned whole of nation approach, whole of government approach, whole of society approach. But we will take note of this. And to your point, this should be part of the wordings at the very beginning. Thank you, sir. There are several comments in the chat room. So if you would like to share them publicly so that people can react to it, that would be great. This one is from, I'm reading from Joselito Caparino, sir. Maybe you would like to share to the group your insights about what you wrote down in the chat. So for those who are not able to read through the chat, Sir Joselito said, on the proposed Department of Disaster Resilience vis-a-vis existing LGU, the LGU may have hard time to respond and recover if the disaster is so massive in scale and devastating impacts on the ground. Example is Yolanda. So indeed, there are some issues about really empowering and enabling the LGUs to respond and recover, but the bigger question is sometimes those abilities are driven by funding, and the funding has to really come from sometimes the national or the regional level. Okay, we'll put that in the comments and the reactions as well. I see several people writing down notes, nodding their head, shaking their head. It's okay to agree, disagree. We welcome everybody, everybody's opinion. So keep their comments and reactions coming. Okay? Nakakapagod na magsulat ng mga tinatype ng mga speakers natin, ng mga participants natin. We have recording, so we will go back to the statements para talagang we accurately capture them. Sir Ace? Yes, sir. Go ahead.
No, I just wanted to make my another comment on the part of the recovery, and I think this is something that we really need to be serious about and really, I guess, put more focus on it. And this is to do with trauma counseling.
Trauma counsel.
I've seen in Yolanda, people were really impacted, and and I haven't heard any formal or any organized trauma counseling being done on those people impacted by any disaster. Now, as we are all aware, trauma doesn't manifest immediately. Sometimes it takes years, and sometimes, the person gets over the cliff, and you'll never know why. But if you are going to analyze the events preceding that, then you'll find out that that person was traumatized by a particular event. So this is something that the government should really look into and be part of that recovery effort. That's why in recovery, that's part of the continuing recovery, because continuing recovery takes time. Sometimes it takes years. And it's not only to do with recovering the physical damage, but the emotional and the emotional well-being of the people as well. So, we really need to have a look at this closely for better resilience as well.
Thank you, sir. It's not also mentioned in the bill. There's no reference to an organized trauma council that would really look into this very important aspect of disaster management. Okay, thank you, sir. Noted.
Just an example, just like now, all of us are all of us are under quarantine. You know, like for us seniors, we cannot go out. So maybe after this pandemic, a lot of us will probably have PTSD. You know, because we are prisoners in our own home. Although it's for me, I don't mind because I have grandchildren. That makes me happy, and my wife as well. But you know, but for others who had not been really gone out, this is something that mental health is a very important issue and has to be incorporated in, I guess, in these activities. You know, in the resilience in the resilience activities, mental health issues should be taken into consideration as well.
Thank you, Sir Hermie. Thank you for raising that up because I think the absence of the words like trauma or individual sickness or individual's mental health are somehow left out from the definition of terms in the House bill because the approach is so, let me pardon the word, macho. It's so masculine that it just focuses on the disaster and then it focuses on communities. That's why there's no really mention that resiliency should start from a person. So that's why probably if there's that absence, even at the definition of vulnerability, and it just talk about physical and tangible things and non-human, then we're not really building resiliency in our communities because the basic unit of society is the family and the person. So I really wish to hear from our participants here or from the medical sector who can really share what is the impact. What is the impact or really to the to the doctors, to the medical profession, to the health services in each disaster, whether this is whether it's COVID or not. Can we hear from anyone? Thank you, Sir Hermie. Talagang valuable yung mga experience.
Experience, I said, I'm having PTSD already.
Okay lang, sir. May apo naman tayo eh.
Thank you, Sir Hermie, for sharing that one. Dapat talaga na during operations, simultaneously ginagawa na yan tinatawag nating psychosocial, yung pagdating sa traumatic experience. I'll give you an example. Noong nagkaroon ng aksidente sa Itogon, Benguet, the last one. So we go to the province of Itogon. I am wearing another cap. That is the cap of Philippine Red Cross. So while giving, sending all the relief goods, we do the psychosocial part sa mga bata at sa mga matatanda. Okay? So dapat given na rin yon on the part. So dapat tukuy lang natin who are the agencies who are capable of doing that. We have the Philippine Red Cross. We have the Department of Health. Dapat nasa kanila na yun eh. For example, Department of Health, they have that I think division that has the mandate of doing that, the psychosocial aspect sa mga victims of calamities and of course pandemic. Now, on the part ng response, the responders also has that kind of traumatic experience as well. Kaya nga, lahat ng mga leaders, especially the team leaders nito mga tinatawag nating first responder, must know how to conduct debriefing among themselves, among their groups, para when they go back on their respective workplace, nawawala na yung trauma sa kanila. So that is we call that debriefing on the part. So para sa akin, sir, dapat simultaneously yan ang ginagawa. I do believe talaga na after a year, hindi pa nawawala yan eh, pag hindi na-release yan. Kaya kailangan ma-release yung experience na yan. So maraming mga pamamaraan para mawala yung stress na yan o yung trauma na yan sa mga affected na mga families or individual.
Thank you, Sir Rani. We are getting very valuable insights from everybody.
Hello.
Yes, go ahead.
Hello.
Okay.
Who likes to speak? We can hear you.
Jerry Ilagan, permission to participate.
Yes,
Yeah,
Sir
sure,
Jerry.
Jerry.
Magandang umaga po sa atin lahat at maganda po ang ating tinatalakay. Ang akin lang pong suggestion to the group, pwede po ba yan, tag list?
Apo, go
Yes,
ahead.
sir.
Una po, sa aking pagkakaalam, ako po si Jerry Ilagan dito sa Metro Manila Emergency Volunteer Corps. At sa mga naging partisipasyon ko po sa mga nakaraang kaganapan, sa ngayon po ang Kongreso, ang aking mungkahi, sana po i-revisit natin yung mga ginagawa natin na mga bill o batas. For example, yung pong ongoing, yung ating pong batas na umiiral, na Republic Act 10121, na familiar tayong lahat, yan po ay matagal na nangangailangan ng amendment. Kasi tapos na po yung 5 taon niya na tinatawag na sunset provision. Dapat po napalitan na yan, na-update. Doon po sa mga ginawang mga hearing, meron po mga suggestion. Isa, meron po nag-suggest na mag-create ng Department of Public Order and Safety na makangasiwa sa ganitong programa. Ang naging issue lang po dito ay pagdating halimbawa doon sa responsibility ng mga opisina at saka ng pondo. Kasi maraming tao na naman ang i-create. Pero po naman suggestion na baka naman po yung department natin, yung Bureau of Fire Protection, yan po ay matagal nang naririyan at kailangan na lang po natin yan ipalakasin. Yan po ay nakakalat na sa buong Pilipinas. At sanay na po rin yan, may mga training na rin po yan, hindi lang sa sunog, kundi pati dito sa pandemic. Ito po tinatawag nating CBRN or Chemical, Biological, Radiological. Baka po kinakailangan ito na ma-integrate na lang. Meron din po tayong recently approved na batas. Ito po sa Department of Human Settlements. Nakasama rin po dyan ang responsibility ng disaster response. So, baka po ang kinakailangan dito talagang i-revisit natin yung mga umiiral na policy. Kasi ang pinakamahina po sa atin ngayon ay isang malinaw na national policy na siya pong magiging reference ng lahat. Ang isa rin po kinakailangan natin dito, nahinto lamang po yung ating programang ginagawa. Sa Metro Manila, sinika po natin na magkaroon ng tinatawag na One Metro. Yung buong Metro Manila ay pag-iisahin. Kasama na po ang pribado, sector at ang 17 local government units. Isang programa, isang plano, isang response, isang training. Dapat po sa ganito lahat ma-revisit. Ang pinakamahina po sa atin na nakita natin ngayon, yung po pagdating sa disaster, yung disaster financing. Marami po tayong pera pero hindi po tama ang utilization or application. For example po, kung sakali po itong the big one ito mama sa atin, yung pong pera halimbawa ng SSS sa mga pribadong sektor, wala po silang programa ng disaster financing sa mga SS member on how to assist yung mga nabiktima natin ng mga SS member. Ang government po ay kinakailangan ding ayusin natin ang ating mga communication system. Nagkakandak po tayo ng every quarter nung araw na tinatawag natin yung mga drill. Ang nakita po natin kahinaan, hindi po magkita-kita, hindi po ma-implement yung programa sapagkat iba-iba ang komunikasyon. Wala po tayong clear communication system and technology. At ang mga gumagamit po ay lagi po napapalitan. So hindi po natutuloy, hindi nasusustain. Sa ngayon po, ako po ay nakapanood ng palabas sa television, yung The Big One. Sana po ay panoorin din nyo. Ang napansin ko lang po dito sa ongoing na pinapalabas ngayon sa television, sa pelikulang The Big One sa Korea, pinapakita dito ang kahinaan ng mga mamamayan at saka ng gobyerno. Sa panig po ng gobyerno, ipinakita rito yung kanilang walang sawang need for political quest for power. At sa private sector po, yung kanila po naman tinatawag na need for continuing profit. Ang tawag po dyan ay corruption. So lahat po na ito ay mga aral na sana ikapulutan natin ng kaalaman na makakatulong sa atin sa pagsasagawa ng mga ganitong policy or batas. Sana po ay maging matagumpay ang ganitong pagpupulong at kami po ay nakikiisa. Ang nakikita ko po ngayon na pinakamahalaga na magagawa natin ay palakasin lamang uli itong ating community, ang mga komunidad. Tayo po, nasa corporate tayo, nasa gobyerno, pag tayo po ay umalis sa ating trabaho, pagbalik natin sa ating komunidad, sana tayo po ang maging disipulo or apostoles na siyang gagabay sa ating respective family and community. Sa ganyang pamamaraan, mapagkakaisa po natin ang buong Pilipinas sa pagtutulungan sa ganitong gawain about disaster management. Maraming salamat po.
Thank you, Sir Jerry. Very good points. So just to clarify, you're from the Metro Manila Emergency Volunteer Corps?
Opo, ito po ay sapagkat meron po tayong batas na umiiral. Halimbawa, sinasabi po ng batas na ang lahat ay kinakailangang magtulong-tulong. Meron po tayong tinatawag na batas tungkol sa volunteerism. At ang sinasabi rin po rito, ang gobyerno ay dapat manguna sa pagpapatupad ng pagsunod dito sa volunteerismo. Kaya nagpalabas ng civil service ng kautusan na ang gobyerno ay kinakailangang magtayo ng opisina upang maging modelo o manguna sa pagpapatupad nitong batas ng volunteerismo upang nang sa ganon ang private sector ay magkaroon ng modelo o huwaran sa pagpapatupad ng batas na ito. Napakatagal na po ng batas na ito na wala nakakaalam at hindi po naipatupad ng tama. So hanggang ngayon po pinagdidebatihan pa kung ano ang Tagalog sa tinatawag na volunteerism. Ilang meeting na po ang ginawa, hanggang ngayon hindi pa nagkakasundo. Doon lang po sa usaping terminal, yung tinatawag terminology sa volunteerism ay hindi magkasundo. So ang sinasabi ko lang po dito, mataas na po ngayon ang awareness ng mga mamamayan. Baka kinakailangan sa ating maliit na kakayanan, tayo na nasa privado sector, patuloy tayo mag-aral, pero huwag tayo matapos dito. Ituro natin ito sa ating pamilya. Upang sila naman, tayo sa ating pamilya, hindi na po tayo empleyado. Tayo po ay part ng community. Tayo na po ang mag-train ng ating respective community. Ang kailangan lang natin sa komunidad ay 10 tao na nakatira. Itong 10 tao na ito, bata at matanda ay magtulong-tulong para makapagtayo ng barangay response team. Hindi na po kinakailangan gumastos ng malaki. At ang lahat ay may malasakit sapagkat diyan naman tayo nakatira sa ating barangay na kinakailangan magtulong-tulong na lang. Kung ang isang barangay ay nangangailangan ng problema, ang tutulong sa kanya ay ang pinakamalapit na kapitbahay o kalapit na barangay. 44,000 barangay, 10 tao lang po sa bawat barangay, times 42,000, that is 420,000 able body na may kaalaman, may kakayanan at may magagawa. Kulang po tayo ng makabagong technology, pero mayaman po tayo sa puso, marami po tayong tao handang tumulong. Wala pong monopoly ng pagmamahal at pagtulong sa ating kapwa. So social capital natin po, 110 million Pilipinos po tayo. I-utilize po natin ito. At yan ay magagawa natin kung ang bawat isa ay tutulong kahit na sa pinakamaliit na paraan sa kanyang magagawa sa kanyang komunidad. Salamat po.
Thank you, Sir Jerry. Very powerful words. I must admit, this is the first time I'm hearing about the volunteer law. Can you give us meron ka bang reference nun, sir?
Republic Act 9418, civil service, saka po sa civil service, meron po silang kautusan na ipinalabas about volunteerism.
Thank you,
So,
sir.
mga umiiral ng mga batas po on volunteerism. Ito po mga ito ay nakahandang tumulong. Kagaya po ng mga bata ngayon, eksperto sa sabihin natin, yung tinatawag natin na response. Marami po mahusay dyan sa technology, yung mga bata na yan. Mga volunteer po yan, tumutulong po yan sa pamagitan ng IT. Ito po yung mga unsung hero. Pero hindi lang po na-utilize sapagkat hindi nila alam kung paano sila tuto. Ang nangyayari sa atin, pag may disaster, saka lang po tayo kumikilos sa pamagitan ng response. Pero yung pinag-uusapan po natin ngayon, halimbawa sa planning, yung pre-disaster, so yan po ang kulang sa atin. Pero kung nagkaroon na po ng disaster, kagaya ng Ondoy, kagaya ng Tacloban, ang lahat po ng Pilipino ay hindi mo kayang pigilin sa kanyang kagustuhan tumulong. Ang kailangan po sana natin, huwag na tayo maghintay ng disaster bago tayo kumilos. I-utilize na po natin kung ano yung meron tayo. Halimbawa po sa equipment, ang mga local government, hindi na po natin siguro kinakailangan i-duplicate yung binibili ng national government at saka ng local government na equipment. Yung kailangan ng local para sa kanilang risk ay bilhin nila yung equipment. Ang regional, provincial at national government ay para doon sa mas malaking problema. Huwag nang i-duplicate yung equipment. Ang nangyayari po sa atin, pag bumili ng ambulansya yung isang local government, bibili din ng ambulansya yung national. So ang dapat bilhin natin dito, kung sasakyan panlupa yung meron sa LGU, siguro baka kailangan ng national helicopter, pero parehong ambulansya. So ibig ko sinasabi po dito, nagkakaroon po ng duplication. So ang dapat po siguro dito, based on need, ang kinakailangan natin pagtuunan ng paggastos ng ating, sabihin nating resources. Yung pong tinatawag nating insurance, napakarami po ng pera niyan, pero wala pong policy. Ang mga tao po ay nagko-contribute. Private insurance agency, government insurance agency, GSIS, SSS, ang dami po ng pera dyan. Pero wala po silang programa on how to utilize the fund kung sakaling magkaroon ng disaster. Ito po ang tinatawag ng disaster financing on how to recover immediately. So mga ganong aspeto po.
Thank you very much, Sir Jerry. Ang dami mo magagandang mga sinabi, pero ako I was triggered when you said that marami na tayong mga batas, and hopefully itong ating effort mamulat din natin yung mata ng ibang mga legislators to look at the big picture. Baka nga when they're looking at developing the law, they're only focused on one aspect. Meron na palang ibang mga existing batas that can supplement, enrich, enhance, para mas talaga holistic yung ating approach. Very, very well said, Sir Jerry. Marami pong salamat.
Likewise.
Sir Wally, I would like to congratulate Jerry. If I'm not mistaken, Jerry Lagan is the former safety officer or vice president from PLDT. Tama ba, Sir Jerry?
Nung bata-bata pa tayo.
Yes. A good friend of mine.
Kayo yung mga idolo natin. Galing na rin po tayo sa SOPI, sa mga volunteer.
Yes. So I agree with that. Jerry. Talagang we have to strengthen ang barangay natin. Ang daming barangay natin sa Pilipinas. Actually, sila talaga yung dapat natulungan at i-train natin. In terms of what? In terms of technical know-how. Alright? So, I agree with that. Kaya, kung isasabatas natin to at ma-harmonize natin ang LGU through barangay, palagay ko, malayo mararating natin. We will be really a resilient country as a Filipino pag naisabatas natin to at bigyan natin ng kapangyarihan ang mga barangay, LGUs natin para gawin ang dapat. Sir Jerry, salamat.
Salamat po.
Sir Wally.
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Yeah, habang wala pa pong nagsasalita, may gusto lang akong idagdag at napakaganda ng mga ating naringgan. Speaking from my own experience, it took me like 1 week in May to get my quarantine pass because of some government barangay issue on issuing IDs. So I think you can, a lot of us probably can relate here. And my point being is, I think we need some kind of specific strategies. If I can mention this, I am going through the entire document, but it's a 58 page. So maybe later on I can go back to review it. But what I think is possible, or that we could probably do, probably is to include like a comprehensive directory of the barangay contact information, like basically kung paano sila makontact through email, SMS, or Facebook. I've been, searching, and I am in Manila, and I couldn't find a comprehensive or even probably updated barangay provided or maintained by the government, whether in the national or local government level. And then if we can have a way to synchronize this with the national ID system, and then of course, most importantly, kailangan nga yung sinasabi ko po kanina, a established, reliable communication platform. Maybe yun na nga, integrated with the directory, where we can actually be able to reach out to our barangay officials. And isa po lastly, for the barangay officials to have like a maintained database of constituents or residents, because when I went to a barangay, for example, and they were all referring to about 2 years ago lists. So I just moved into the barangay within the year, and I was not definitely included. Things like this, I hope this could be, included or considered in the resilient, in this policy document. Thank you.
Thank you, Sir Sam.
So far we have tackled already the importance of information, data, communications, definition of recovery, and even in fact the mention of trauma. I was reminded by Lai Esteban, my staff at Resilient.PH, that there's a small provision on recovery and trauma in the bill, in the proposal or the approved House bill, but it mentions on access only to trauma centers during resettlement or settlement. So parang ano ba, parang parang so narrow na you will only think about trauma, pero it's not the responsibility of any LGU siguro, parang or ng bill. Basta may access lang yung settlement area to a trauma center and more and others. So I think that just to straighten the discussion, meron, pero it's not really the trauma that we've been discussing here. Okay. So anymore, we still have enough time to process more information, no?
Saka again, Sir Ace, just to re-emphasize the point, we will be consolidating all of the output and will be sharing with the Office of Civil Defense, aka the Secretariat of the NDRIMC, and also so our several senator contacts. We are also planning, wala pang concrete plans, wala pang concrete details, sorry, of another version of this public forum. Hopefully, we can get some of the proponents of the Senate version to comment on the output that we will be submitting. That will be an interesting forum also that we hope you can support. So let's continue with the discussion. There's an interesting point raised about disaster risk financing, Sir Ace, in the chat room.
Yes. Yes. I think that was raised by Ms. Cheryl Gutierrez. And then I think it was a reference to someone talking about disaster financing. Actually, as discussed in school at AIM, disaster risk financing is really one course. And then that is one thing that we should really be, I think, should be pushing when it comes already to the disaster resilience department. Because when we're talking about funds, it will not just be talking about government funds that is being downloaded and then parang dole out. Yung parang, it's not even seen as a financing scheme, a recovery, or a livelihood. So there should be a mechanism. As mentioned by Sir Jerry kanina, maganda yung definition niya ng corruption. So from that definition, we can progress probably that our disaster resilience should not be founded on corruption. I think that is my summary on DRF. Anyone who would like to add pa on the DRF, on disaster risk financing or disaster financing? Meron pang kamag-anak yun sustainable financing. No?
Sir Ace?
Yes, Sam.
Yeah, actually, it's covered
Yes,
in
Sam. Go
the
ahead, Sam.
document po under page 18, line number 32. It says establish and monitor national and local capacity for disaster risk financing and insurance and other risk transfer strategies in coordination with the Department of Finance, Government, GSIS, and Land Bank and Insurance Commission. So I think it's more or less covered there. But siguro isang gusto kong ma-highlight is the way, for example, the government frames their, like stimulus packages, for example, like now, uh, my business, for example, is affected and they are like, trying to provide the stimulus packages mainly with so very restrictive,
Yeah.
policies, which of course not so many can actually afford to, even apply and qualify. So I think it must be again focusing on who really needs the kind of assistance in terms of risk financing.
Hello,
Yeah.
sir. If I may add, this is Cheryl. Yes, relating on the disaster risk financing aspect, I think the way to strengthen it is to focus more on the LGUs, or if it's more on a community-based level. Why? Because sometimes it takes a long time for the national level to download any strategies, finances down to the LGU. And who are the mostly affected when it comes to disasters? The local communities. So it would shorten the time of recovery and also the response, and what do you call this, heavily reliance on humanitarian assistance from the from the international or national level, if the LGUs are already equipped with their own strategies when a calamity or a disaster strikes. So that's it from my end. Thank you.
Thank you, Cheryl. I think we can remember several experiences when that has been the case, when it takes quite a long time for the resources to flow from the national government down to the local levels. Very interesting. Thank you.
I think that there was a discussion also on health insurance, and I think it's a discussion between Mr. Dexter and Sir Leo. Sir Dexter, if you would like to share anything to trigger the discussion on health insurance, which I added as probably we can add more discussion into it, because we find out that even in today's COVID, our health insurance are not really adequate, and the fact that we have problems also in field health.
Sir, good morning. Exactly, sir. I'm becoming clear, sir. Just look at nowadays. Look at what's happening to our frontliners. I was gonna foot the bill, and assuming they're not able to recover, a measly 1 million for the frontliners. Those are medical practitioners. What about the volunteers? The typical barangay tanod, the typical barangay health worker. What about them? Volunteerism is alive in our country. Volunteerism is alive in every one of us. But then at the end of the day, we are all breadwinners. And of course, our families will suffer if we break our limbs or we lost our lives. So what about it, sir? I mean, is there provision for that, I suppose, the law department to provide support? It's going to be long term. Should be.
Thank you, Sir Dexter. That's an interesting point. Most of the focus are on the medical sector. The volunteers in the barangays are equally exposed, sometimes even more so. and sometimes they don't have all the necessary equipment and resources to protect themselves. If something were to happen to them, that's going to be unfortunate and the families will be affected. The same goes with the existing setup with the local DRRMOs and the people who are not officially part of uh, uh, the role of the employees in the government. So we heard from some people that there are employees, contractual employees in government, wala silang plantilla, that they are doing response work, putting their lives at risk, and they're not even protected from the cases na they get disabled or they get affected that to the point that they won't be able to provide for their families. Very interesting point. Thank you, Sir Dexter.
If I may, good morning. This is
Morning.
from AIM and also LDREMO of Bayambang, Pangasinan. Yeah, that is true. That is true. The manpower that we call job orders,
Yes.
they are job orders, and we call them actually as our multipliers. Yes, they are not entitled to that hazard pay that was given by the government. And as per COA,
Oh.
they are not the current policy. They are not entitled to that. So that's one problem that we're having here at the grassroots, the local level, local government level, and even as the RRM needs to justify that we really urban power really needs to be given the hazard pay, including the DSWD, because if actually now they are the frontliners giving the SAP, the distribution of the SAP, and they are there at the ground. So mingling with the people that they might be positive, there might be cases, but they're also not medical practitioners. So in the law, based on the policy that was given by the national, they're not also entitled. So those are only few of the instances here in the local government that hopefully the national could also look into and consider. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Jean. Yes, very, very, very valid insights. We tend to miss out on some of the people who are actually doing really big work like the DSWD. Thank you for your insight.
You're
Sure,
welcome.
some insights.
Thank you for those who are putting in their comments in the chat. Those who are not able to share uh, in public, to voice out, you can put it in the chat room. We will collect all of this. And again, the hope is come up with an output that we can share to the people that needs to read them. Concretely, the OCD is expecting an output from our public forum today, and we promise that we will also share with offices of the senators putting together the counterpart bill.
Sir Wally, some insights.
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Hi. Hi, Mr. Eugene Boko from the volunteer sector also. I have some ano lang naman na insights regarding the link of service ng LGUs and the grassroots levels natin. Most of the LGUs, although we have the existing laws in the RA 10121 in the service, I think majority of the strength of the LGU workers in terms of DRR is more on contractual, and the continuity of services nawawala, especially when changing of administrations. We're investing too much of the trainings, etc., even the equipments, and yet if the transition period, if the certain local officer or their boss or whoever that is, nawala, automatic change of people. We're wasting, kawawa naman yung mga kawawa yung mga workers natin na tama ang sinabi nga ni Ma'am Jean kanina, the protection of them, the protection of the people without any hazards, and yet after the change of the administration biglang nawala. I think if the councils or even if the lawmakers can make a provision of that one kung paano nila i-continue yung job or whatsoever, i-strengthen lang kung yung hiring or whatsoever. So paano natin i-craft doon sa level na yon? Kasi the local units is investing monies, efforts, especially the people around there. Kung ika nga, gamay na nila eh. And yet, tama yung sinabi din kanina, nagiging repetition management na lang yung ginagawa, paulit-ulit na lang din. Pabago-bago ng head. Pag hindi magustuhan, ipapakot siya. Something in the political side, no? Yung what I'm saying here. I think that's all siguro, sir. Thanks.
Thank you, Sir Eugene. Very valid point. Again, we need to make sure that our law for disaster resilience is corruption-proof, politicizing-proof. Napaka-valid ng point ni Sir Eugene. We spent a lot of money training people, then magpapalit ng leadership. Lahat ng training na yon, kumbaga hindi na mapapakinabangan. Sayang naman. Very good point, sir. I think Sir Tristan Ares is in the chat. He's our classmates from the AIM. Maybe he can also share some insights about yung current setup that works in terms of preventing itong political changes to impact disaster management.
Hello, Al. Hello, everyone. Thank you for
Hi, sir.
this.
Good morning.
Oh, yeah, just came from a meeting regarding our COVID response here. But anyway, so very thankful for this opportunity and so glad that maraming mga DreamO dito. So just happened to, heard about the continuity or the sustainability of the functions and roles and responsibilities of a DreamO officer. So we, the LDreamO, particularly the 4th to 6th class municipalities, have been overwhelmed with jobs, multitasking, and especially with the COVID response right now, medyo nawala kasi in times of public health emergency, yung function basically ng risk reduction and management, medyo nawala siya. Medyo nangibabaw yung health at saka yung disaster risk reduction management, medyo nababa. So when it comes to this type of incident or event, usually it's this DreamO who is the front line, especially in the response operation. But for public health emergency, it's the other way around. So medyo maraming mga ibang LDreamO medyo nawawala sa passing. Except lang those municipalities or cities who have been posting the ICS. Because particularly during this public health emergency, through the executive order, basically hindi nabanggit yung ICS. But in RA 10121 and especially yung I think the law on crisis management, mayroong binanggit na mga ICS. So isa ring punto ito na wherein it comes to response operation, the institutionalization of the ICS in the ground level, especially this time of pandemic. And second, what I just would like to have an input is for sustainability. We were thinking of a possible a process or system wherein the screening during the selection process for the LDreamO will be through the national level, just like the municipal treasurer. Because for municipal treasurer, it's the personal selection, the one who does the screening, is the national level, yung BLGF. So what we want, for me, it's better if for sustainability and to ensure that yung LDreamO talaga will be, will be doing his part in implementing the existing LDRIM or the DDR. We're hoping if, for me lang ha, this is just my opinion, that it would be best if yung screening procedure is dadaan doon sa national level, mismo sa Department of Resiliency. And what would like nga sana is, instead of the 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 LDRIM-O being sustained by the LGU, it should be nationalized. Most of our health officers have been devolved with the national with the LGU, and now they are thinking again of bringing back the local health department back to the national level, where hopefully na yung LDRIM-O sana ma-absorb doon sa DDR, nationally paid siya pero locally siya na localized siya. So yun lang ang konti lang input ko for my opinion lang. Okay.
Just to
Yun ang
clarify, Sir Tristan, you're saying na ideally sana the screening for the local disaster resilience officer done by the National Department of Disaster Resilience Office to avoid yung what you were mentioning na kumbaga parang pasok ni mayor, pasok ni governor para talagang qualified itong mga local disaster resilience officer.
Not more on qualified, but basically mayroong sustainability dyan na part kasi medyo mas strengthen na yung recruitment process. We're not saying na hindi magaling yung mga LDRIM. In fact, majority, lahat ng mga LDRIM ngayon dito are competent enough. It just so happens that during change of administration, medyo may the bureaucracy, the politics. So, ganun ang mangyayari. So, why not to strengthen it and to be able to sustain it? So, ganun na ang proseso.
Okay. Noted. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Sir Wally, if I may react.
Sir, go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, Sir Tristan, thank you for that. No? So
yes.
Opo, while I agree to most, no, sabi naman ni Sir Wally, pwedeng mag-disagree, no? Okay po ako dun sa sinabi ni Sir Tristan, except yung sa national. No? Initially, I think that's a no matter of process, that's a good way of looking at alternative frameworks, no. But immediately, ang isang na-realize ko doon is similar with our police, our fire, no. At least for the fire, for the police, case in point is the chief of police. I have trained almost every chief of police that has been stationed in our LGU. Unfortunately, kakarigo doon. So, yung kapapalit has not been trained. So, ang hirap mag-impose kapag hindi trained. So, I think it will suffer the same fate in terms of sustainability kung magpalit-palit naman yung disaster officer, especially na in our line of work, yung familiarity of the ground, ng scene, ng hazards involved, etc., will be difficult kapag every now and then nasa national ang discretion. They can also move them from one local government to another. So yun lang siguro yung nakikita kong medyo risky part na pag national yan, ang thinking ko is something similar with police and fire na pwedeng i-destino sa ibang lugar. So baka instead of yung our intention of sustainability, baka it's the other way around. So yun lang naman po as a reaction. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Sir Romel, for the beautiful comment. In fact, yung risk na being yung local dream o on a nationally paid and but locally assigned, yun yung isang risk. But I'm so happy that we both agree with the selection process. Yun naman ang importante sa amin for sustainability. Thank you, Sir Romel.
Thank you din po, sir.
Okay. We are nearing the end of our public forum. I would like to trigger everybody because this was used in the bill, Build Forward Better. So it also resonates with what we have been using in class, AIM, Build Back Better. No, so the idea is constantly evolving our processes, our system, so that we look forward at a scenario na hindi kagaya nung nakalipas. So hopefully that also resonates in the entire development of the bill. Na we don't just stop with what is already parang obsolete. We've noticed that may mga batas na tapos na yung kanilang value, hindi na siya applicable, and then they're not practical, but they're still part of the law. Maybe one consideration would be to put in a provision to constantly evaluate Department of Resilience mandates, processes, systems, protocols, para it evolves with the need of the communities.
Sir Wally?
Yes, sir.
Oo. If I may add, no, siguro more of culminating comment doon sa mga nabanggit kanina. I-second ko lang yung criticality nung covering nung, I think the one of the major reason, that's why we're moving towards from DRRM to resilience, is yun nga, it should cut across yung other aspects of disaster, no? So yung human, crisis, and then yung including yung mga cyber threats, no. I think if I browse through the proposed bill, in some cases ganun siya, but I don't think na ganun yung reading for all throughout it, no. Like yung sa risk, very critical, pero disaster lang, so baka natural lang yung kanyang kinoconsider. So I think yung uniformity ng language ng bill, especially starting with the definition of terms, I'm sure there are a lot of discussions, yung discussions ng ano ba yung crisis, ano ba yung human induced. There are people that would argue that there's no such thing as natural disaster, no? Lahat daw yan ay gawa ng tao, no? So, but I leave it up to the to the debate, no? So, to me that's very critical, no? Kasi one of the first few things that I did in our local government after I was trained for the basic incident command system is to come up with a executive order, and at the same time adopted by the Sangguniang Bayan, na defined yung incident commander for each type. Kasi andyan nagkakagulo-gulo eh, no? So case in point yang sa kung ano mang name your disaster, yan ang number one na problema eh. So hindi magtatalo. So define dapat, like for instance, it's pandemic, sino mag-i-incident commander diyan? And tama din yung sinabi ni Sir Tristan kanina na ako personally I don't want to brag doon sa iba, but yun naman training na binabanggit ni Sir Hermie, may training po on the ground, pero it has to be cut across from the last individual to the highest position in the land, with all due respect po dun sa mga nasa national. I think the handling of COVID-19 is also a function of not being trained consistently with the training that the people on the ground are having. Yung framework ng IATF, later on inihabol yung NTF, which is really the framework na tinuruan kami. So ito itinuro nyo sa amin pagdating sa national. So ang hirap sumabay galing sa national na iba yung training na ibinigay sa amin, and then iba yung policy guidelines na ibinababa. So I think that's one of the major, and hopefully this DRR bill would be able to clarify once and for all, regardless if it's a pandemic or natural or crisis. Yung definition niyan is really very critical na ma-define ng ayos. Yun lang po, Sir Wally, para hopefully makadagdag doon sa comments niyo.
Thank you, Sir Romel. Very well said. It's at this point that we have to end this public forum, but it is definitely not going to be the last. Sir Ace?
It's very sad that we have to end because we have reached our time. But I think it's just enough that we have a very pleasant and very rich discussion on the things that are close to our hearts, no? And I would like to thank you again for those who are here. Thank you for those who were cut off with their internet connection. But that's one thing also we have to consider: the internet connection or dependence on smartphones during emergency. So for me, the use of technology is really important. When we talk about digital transformation and then being a resilient country, we cannot escape the fact that communications now relies on how we process data, the data that we convert into information, that we convert into the knowledge that we base our decisions. So for us at Resilient.PH, we always drive for that way of thinking, wherein when we make decision, it is evidence based and it is data driven. No, so I would like to especially thank everyone, but then I cannot mention everyone also one by one because we are almost 90 plus. So thank you for your participation, especially for the inputs. No, we learned a lot, and we have a tally here. And then if you have given us your email address, of course you did, we will send you a copy of this. No, the link to the Google Drive so that you can add more on your comments. We might miss a lot of information, but we will try to work on this Google Drive once we have reviewed the recording. And feel free to be part of the community of this effort. And probably next time when we have our next discussion, probably we can do this by weekly basis because we want to be heard by the Senate. Then probably next week we will have this, and then let's invite more. We will send you the link, send it to your friends in the network and Viber group and other chat groups, and we will be glad to have more of our friends connecting with us. So ako, salamat lang talaga ako that there are so many of us here that are really working on resiliency and disaster risk and crisis communications. Thank you very much, and let's have a very good lunch and
Sir, Ace,
think about what we
picture
said.
taking.
Yes, what?
Picture taking
Oh
daw.
yeah, okay. Sige. Picture taking.
Can everybody
So
please turn on their
turn on your
Video.
videos?
Yes.
Naging na siyang staple ng mga Zoom meetings eh. Sorry. Other people are tired of smiling, pero let's try. Okay? Meron tayong 4 pages. So, big smiles everybody. Turn on your cameras. Okay? Wait, next page. Okay, I see slides there. Okay, turn on your videos, please. Okay lang kung ayaw, nahihiya. Okay, got it.
Thank you,
Done.
Sir A. Sir Wally, salamat.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Salamat po.
Thanks po sa lahat.
Thank you.
Watch out for part 2.
Thank you all.
Thank you for the wonderful session.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sirs. Stay
Thank
safe
you.
po.
Stay safe. God bless, guys. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Hey guys.
Ang hirap mag-remove ng mga tao.
I'll stop
Wow.
recording.